this conversation about why it's difficult for you to put commercial in there is a big problem, because if we could make it easier and more streamlined for you to do something like that, you probably would do it.
Yeah.
You know,
We've thought about it. I mean,
Yeah.
we looked at it. We studied it.
you sacrifice probably a unit or two
Right.
that you can sell,
Right.
but what it would do is it would draw attention this way,
Yeah.
and it would also draw attention towards your project.
Yeah.
So it would be good in practice, but
mean-
the numbers have to work, obviously, for you.
Good retail will add value to the residential, because it becomes an amenity.
Right.
Development in general, I think, is half an art and half a science, right? Like the science is the mathematics of it all. What that cool factor is that makes people want to live someplace and will make
Right.
them pay more, and the fun part is figuring out how to get the two to work, and what you get from that is like improving the community and maximizing returns for your investors and for
Yeah.
yourself. So
And rebuilding the city and being a part
It's a
of this
win-win.
whole transition. Yeah, it's a win-win.
it's a win-win.
And there's a bunch of things that can get in the way of that, right? The code and the permit process and the financial obligations and investors, and then you mentioned, you have to cut into Nebraska for this particular project. That's a permit from the DOT,
Yep.
which how long does that take usually?
It
Hard
can
to
be anywhere from 6 months to a year.
Wow. Just to get the approval to do something like
Well, I mean, you got your design time, you've got your back and forth. You got to have your city permits before you get your DOT permits. In this instance, they want to see that the city's approved it first. Then you go to the DOT. So
that? Right. And of
we know
course, this
permitting
isn't
with the city.
specific to this city. This is nationwide. I mean, every municipality, some do it better than others, but certainly there's all these layers that developers have to go through
Yeah.
to build housing, to build businesses.
Yeah, I mean, we're strictly in developing Florida, really along the west coast from Tampa. We've done projects from Tampa down to Naples and east to Orlando, but nothing between Tampa and Orlando because we're very urban focused. But every municipality has its differences, its strengths, its weaknesses, its challenges, and you layer in, things on a federal and state level too within those that just create challenges.
The Art and Science of Development with Mike Mincberg.
I'm flattered.
I appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm a fan of the show. I think you've been having a lot of important conversations. I think that you've built a really great audience from the public and private sector that watch here, and creating a platform for dialogue, which is an education. And I'm sure I may get some things wrong and whatnot, but I think it's a dialogue that's important and can lead to evolution.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I totally agree. It's all about the conversation. Having the conversation out in the open about strengths, weaknesses of our community, and being real about it and being constructive, trying to do this thing together, build a region all together.
For sure.
Government, public, private, all of it, the whole thing. But I appreciate you being here today. Just so people understand, you are site development.
Yep.
You've done some house flipping. We'll probably
SIGHT.
SIGHT.
Yep.
And talk to me about real quick so people understand what you've developed. What would people know kind of around the region, what you've done?
Sure. Yeah. So we're multifamily developers. We do a mix of for sale and for rent. And we've done everything from boutique multifamily, 10 units on up to 300 unit Class A multifamily projects. So like some of our early projects were that are known as like the Bootlegger Factory Flats, which was an old warehouse in Tampa Heights that we converted to 22 flats. In St. Pete's side, we did a schoolhouse, a Euclid schoolhouse. We converted into apartments. So those projects were kind of small projects, but big on character. Got us kind of some notoriety. There's a schoolhouse, for example, and led us to getting some other opportunities. We've been involved with for sale townhome development's been a niche of ours and something I've been involved in going back to 2005
Wow.
when I got started in real estate. And we really like that niche because we tend to play in a project site that's, you know, too big for the mom and pop developers. So, 30, 40 unit projects, but too small for the public home builders, and so we were able to skate away from the institutional competition. And it's been a good niche for us. I think having home ownership within, and again, we're very urban focused within the urban cores of Tampa and St. Pete, where we've been primarily focused, where you see a lot of for rent housing being built,
Right.
is just there's demand for it, and it
Yeah.
helps create community. I mean, renters are an important part of the community as well, but home ownership is, proven to be an asset in a
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. Why do you believe it's a proven asset?
Well, I mean, anytime you have people putting their money into something, they're going to care more. It's they're putting their down payment, they're making their mortgage payment every month, and I mean, you have some long-term renters, not to take anything away
Sure.
from them, but it's easier to walk away from that.
Yeah.
So you just have typically homeowners can be invested in the community. They're less transient, right? And so a mix of the two, like you see these large Class A apartments and I think what's really exciting, like about a lot of our projects, if you talk about Canvas Gas Worx specifically, is like the Water Street development. There were some condos planned originally, but they ended up converting to apartments, right? And Gas Worx, everything I've seen planned there is for rent housing as well. So there's very few opportunities for home ownership in these exciting, dynamic neighborhoods where people want to live, right? This is where people are renting, paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month. So our target and where we've been successful is transitioning those renters into homeowners. And then specifically on the townhome project versus a condo, you get fee simple ownership, right? Which is easier to finance. Typically your units are going to be larger. We have private garages, your own front door. So if you have a dog, you're not coming down an elevator. Our units are have rooftop terraces, so you have private outdoor space. So yeah, and you can't build these in the scale that you can these apartments, right? Like
Sure.
we have our Gas Worx project is over 4 acres, and we're building 79 units. If that was an apartment project, you'd have 500 units, right? So the value there to a buyer is that they've got an asset that can't be built in abundance within that neighborhood, because where are you going to go in Gas Worx now?
Yeah.
Or, even there's nothing really in Water Street and get that kind of land to build those townhomes. So I always think that basic economics, supply and demand.
Yeah.
So when you have a limited supply, it's a good investment in the long term. And I think that's where we've had success.
And the idea of ownership too, where people have a larger stake in the community, makes complete sense. If you own a unit in the downtown core, you're much more likely to be involved civically. If there's an issue in your neighborhood, you're more likely to call the cops or tell the local government about it. Versus if you're a renter, you're just a renter in the area, you might not necessarily have much of a stake, so you might not show up.
It's just easier to cut and run, right? Like it's like if you're dating a girl, it's easier to leave. You're
Sure.
married, you have kids, you're going to work through more, right? Like so it's
Yeah.
you've got a down payment, you've saved up your, so
I treat my
tenant,
house a lot different than my college
Yeah,
dormitory. You know what I
right?
mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. So that's you're invested.
yeah.
So
Well, and I think for Tampa specifically and Ybor, that's really important. For an area that never had a lot of permanent residents. Like the joke was always, there's more people living at the county jail downtown than people that actually live downtown.
right.
And so if the city in the region, frankly, wants to grow and develop in the most appropriate way where people have a stake in the community, it's through ownership.
Right.
You do need to have those apartment rentals though, right? You have to have the transit housing and workforce housing and young people.
We need all different housing types.
Correct.
My point is that there's a limited amount of specifically fee simple
Yes,
home ownership
right.
in our urban core, our real urban core, the neighborhoods, like I said, Gas Worx, Water Street. So you have some in the Heights, but as you start to go out, you have Ybor has some, but it's really limited when you talk about, can I have my own front door, my own 2-car garage, own the land underneath me, and walk out my door,
And have all the amenities of
of
living in a downtown core.
exactly.
So this project here, Canvas Gas Worx, it's called.
Yep.
79 unit industrial chic city home community at the crossroads of Tampa's most exciting neighborhoods, Ybor City, Tampa Heights, and downtown. And they're really pretty too. They're very metropolitan, like you'd maybe see in even like Charleston or Brooklyn or something like that.
So, yeah, thank you. The inspiration here was, being that we're on that Ybor border, was definitely industrial warehouse chic, and part of the we really believe in like functional design. There's a lot of things that look cool but don't function well. It's like there's a difference between just, this might be a bad comparison, but like a Maserati and a Ferrari. Like the Maserati looks really good, but it's not built the same,
Sure.
right? Our projects are designed. These are 3-story concrete block with direct applied stucco or direct applied brick. Our windows are all standard sizes. There's very little room for error, for water intrusion. And that's by design and to deliver quality. When you have a lot of movement in your fenestration and different materials changing, and we live in the climate that we do, and we've seen it across, multiple construction projects in the region, water gets behind all those different changes and transitions. So it's a functional design, it's a quality design, and it meets our Canvas brand, which we're doing across. We have a Canvas in Tampa. We have one in St. Pete. Canvas and Gas Worx. We have one in Ybor that we have planned. One in Tampa Heights we have planned. Have one actually coming to Sarasota, hopefully.
Wow.
And that's like a cool urban brand, that the idea is to be in creative neighborhoods, and life's your canvas, make of it. But on the inside of these units, we show off the quality of the structure. We have exposed CMU walls, concrete floors, things that are functional design, which is what we believe in. I don't like the Mickey Mouse, fake this, fake that. No, let's use the real authentic elements.
And so this one's really interesting. We're looking at, it's all black windows and brick, and
black is my favorite color. I
you
wanted
dressed
to
the
do
part
black
today.
townhomes. I'm in a black t-shirt 90% of the time. But yeah, it's these have been really popular. The black brick has been
It's
something
sharp looking.
that stood out. Yeah.
And who are you finding moving in? Is it typically people that maybe rent at Water Street or other apartments in the downtown core that have the opportunity to own, and they're making that decision?
For sure. We are seeing a large group of people. The largest group of people are people who are already renting in the urban core, paying high rents and want home ownership. They love the area. And they see that, like, if they're coming from Water Street, like Gas Worx is next.
Right,
and
right.
These, when all the amenities are built in and everyone wants to come, these will be, $1 million townhomes. So I think there's a lot of people buying into it as an investment. And we're getting a lot of new first-time home buyer who's like in their 30s, based on the data that's out there, which is a whole nother discussion. But anyway, but we also are getting buyers who are now empty nesters, who've been from West Chase or somewhere else, more suburban, who kids have gone off, or they only got one kid with them and they want a more urban lifestyle, as I think, urban core is offering more and more. And then we also have had people move from larger cities who just relocated here, kind of, with the whole post-COVID boom, DC, LA, Chicago, who really are drawn to, city living, like where they came from.
And so how did this deal come to be? Because you mentioned it was on the GTE property in like the north downtown kind of area.
Yeah.
Not really north downtown, though. How would you describe it? Gas Worx, right?
Yeah,
West of Gas Worx.
Yeah. So this is, we're really, like it said in our ad marketing, we're like on the edge of Tampa's most exciting neighborhoods. If you look at this locations, I mean, you got Gas Worx right to the east, Encore, directly to the south, where Patel is building that beautiful high rise right
Yeah.
now with the grocer. You've got Heights and Armature Works to the west, so all of that's walkable from here. And this was a kind of, if you look at it, it's a weird shaped lot. It's very narrow. It's not your typical
Yeah, it is.
city block. If you
Right.
look just south at St. Peter Claver or the Encore blocks, they're much deeper. And so GTE owns some of this property. The Boys and Girls Club owned some of it. They closed down, and then a local church owned a part of the property. So it was an assemblage, which is always fun and interesting, and a way to create value because it takes work and effort. And
How long did it take to assemble the property?
It came definitely over a year, but it came together quickly once we gained momentum and we got commitment from one. And I've been really fortunate to work with some people that I really respect, admire, and build some relationships with them. And Daryl Shaw brought this to my attention because he knew we've done some stuff together, and he knew I have a history doing townhome development, and he's just such an inclusive guy who's always thinking about how to improve the community surrounding him and everything that he's doing, and thought it would be a good place for townhomes, and I agreed, and so we just put the pieces together and started working on it.
Amazing. And then you've got a phase 2 on the north, on the corner of Henderson Avenue in Nebraska, and that'll be an additional, you said 40?
That's 39. So the original is 40 units. We've sold 31 of them, and then the next phase will be 39 units, which is currently under construction. We're finishing up phase 1 right now. Should be. We've got about half the COs, and we should have the rest of them between now and end of February.
And so you were mentioning before we hopped on here about how you've done some of the underground site work. You've done some of the stormwater, the sewer system,
phase 2,
and on the phase 2 portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thought there, right? Because you also said you are waiting till you achieve a certain level of sales on phase 1 before you go vertical on the entirety of phase 2.
Well, it's not so much. It's more so that it's just staging the construction. We've got the site work underway.
Because it costs money to do all that.
It costs money to do all that. But we've already gone vertical on part of phase 2, and we just had a hold up in site work because we need to tie in to the sewer system, and we didn't have enough fall. I'm sure people are real interested in this, but we didn't have enough fall.
We always keep it nerdy on this show, man.
To tie into the sewer system. And so we needed to go into Nebraska, which is a DOT road, which requires an additional permit. And so that delayed us. So we're not really waiting on sales. We're just going through that red tape, getting that redesign, going to tie that in, and then we'll finish off the 6 units we have and already gone vertical on and proceed on the additional 33.
So David, if you can, good sir, can you put the little man down at that street corner we were talking about initially? Before we dig into we were talking earlier about some sort of commercial component on the corner there, like a small retail to activate that corner. But first I want to ask you, all this, and we'll have a more detailed conversation as we move forward with the show today, but there's a lot of moving pieces in these projects, and we've had guests on the show that are doing way bigger and smaller projects and everything in between. You just mentioned that something small occurred, which is you don't have enough height to get the water and the sewer to flow downward, right? So you need to go out on Nebraska to get the room to achieve that.
Correct.
But you said that in between design and everything is going to take a year, could be up to a year.
Yeah, yes.
A significant amount of time, let's just say.
Right.
It's like between that and all these other things you have to work through just to achieve, this is, I think, 80 total. How many is it?
Yeah, 79.
79 total townhomes. You kind of have to have another reason to do all this besides just what you described as the science, right? The math behind it and the financials. I mean, you've got to have something in you that wants to provide this product for the community, right? Is your driving force behind your development community driven? Are you trying to rebuild the city? Where does the ambition come from to sit around for a DOT permit?
uh,
And granted,
that's a multifaceted question
well,
there.
look, I know it's probably lucrative, certainly,
That's an idea. Yeah.
but there's got to be something deeper.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some other developers on the show talk about how you have to be a little bit crazy to be a developer,
Sure.
and sometimes you don't know what you're getting into. I mean, I'm a real estate geek. I love real estate, but like I also am have enough self-awareness and humility to know like no one's gonna remember me because of this. You've had developers on this show alone that are doing much more exciting, crazy things. So like I like creating, I like being part of the community, I like being part of the team, but I mean my driving force behind doing anything is from a business standpoint, I'm more of like a lifestyle entrepreneur. I like working for myself. I like having a small team of people. I like being around. That's by design.
Yeah.
I don't want to be, and I'm not saying I'm capable of it, but I don't want to be a 200 person, $1 billion company. That's a conscious decision, even if I could do it.
Sure.
Right? And my driving force behind everything is my family, and whether it's making my parents proud of what I do, or providing quality of life for my wife and my kids. So it's I just don't think that, frankly, I think I'm part of a community, and that's really exciting and fun, and we get to be creative. But I don't think that like anyone's going to remember me for this. So that's not my driving force.
Well, you're doing something.
I don't think I'm leaving a legacy here.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it is critical to the growth of our region. We need developers to build the housing in the commercial spaces, the coffee shops, the stores, this building. Like everything we operate in, all the goods and services are housed in. At one point was probably some sort of speculative development where someone ambitious had a vision for a particular piece of property and expressed that vision.
So it's and
today, go ahead.
No, we're definitely providing an important part of the community, of the urban fabric, with these opportunities for fee simple home ownership. I'm passionate about the Ybor community. I'm passionate about the Ybor City community. My first experience in Ybor was I'm from Washington, D.C. originally, moved here to go to USF when I was 18. And, I got put on a party bus and came down to 7th Avenue in 2002. It was a lot of fun, right? And I got a job, my glory days, bartending at Club Prana, Ybor City, crown jewel for all my Prana alumni. And and I fell in love with Ybor City as a 18, 19-year-old kid for the obvious reasons that you do when you're going, when you're infatuated by all of that stuff, and you're a young person out for a good time. Later on, as I got into a real estate career, and my older brother came to me when I was bartending and told me I need to get serious about my life, so I got my real estate license. That's how I got into it. I did a deal with I bought some property from Bookie Buckman and Joe Capitano, who are like legends to me, and Bookie and I specifically have become really close. His family's name's on the top of a lot of buildings in Ybor, and we have some cultural connections with our Judaism and all that stuff that are really special. And they told me about the history. We did a deal. They told me to come to the Tropicana, which was a famous place that no longer exists in Ybor coffee shop, where presidents had come. And we negotiated the deal, and then I just kept coming back. And I still have coffee with them. Now it's probably like every other week, every 2 to 3 weeks. I used to have, because they moved away from Now they go to a spot not in Ybor City anymore. Um, and so that's where my office still is. So I'm not having coffee as regularly with them, but I had coffee with them as much as I could to learn from them. And I just loved hearing their stories.
Yeah.
And that got me in love with the history. And then actually, my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, we moved down to Ybor City, to Fifth Avenue and the lofts next to El Puerto.
Yeah.
And living there, like you got to see all the community and culture. And I'm a city kid coming from DC, like I love the diversity, I love the arts, the grittiness,
Right.
like, and that made me fall even deeper in love with Ybor. And I think like it's just been some of the stigma that's surrounded it has been part of my motivation to say like, and we've done a lot of projects in Ybor that I'm really proud of, has been like why I just kind of taken that as a challenge. Like what the stigma, this challenge, like this is potential. Like this community has so much to offer. It is the historical and cultural epicenter of Tampa, and not just Tampa, probably the west coast of Florida. Tampa cannot meet its potential without Ybor City being the cultural epicenter of Tampa, in my opinion.
What a soundbite. Love it.
But it's got the walkability, the urban infrastructure, the mix of uses. And one of the really important things and why I love developing in Ybor is it has a zoning code that actually makes more sense for an urban lifestyle, because it's a historic zoning code that was around walkability, right? Parking is more lenient. Green space is more lenient. A lot uses abutting each other are more lenient. These are things that create like this urban fabric. I would come down from my fifth condo on Fifth Avenue, and the guy who owned El Puerto Yenko, I'd come and I'd trade him a drink for a cigar, and like right next to him, I'd smell the steaks getting cooked every day. And like for some people that's a problem. To me, that's character, community. It's interesting. It's culture. Like, so from that to Prana to the Tropicana, there's a ton of history, a ton of community, and it's really exciting to see like some of the big office relocations we're getting in Ybor.
Yeah, man.
And it's just evolving, and I'm
and a lot more
super
to come.
grateful and that we have someone like Daryl who sees the potential, and he talks to those older guys too and gets their stories and partners with them, and is creating something that's going to be really special.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's still a long way to go too. Right. And I guess that's probably a big piece of your motivation, like you're saying, is being a part of it. You're not the driving force, but you are absolutely a part of it.
It's fun to be part of a community. Everyone wants to be part of the community.
Yeah, man. So right before we went live, we were talking about this street corner. David, if you can back up a little bit and show this corner. I was asking you, why not include some sort of a small retail component on that corner? Even if it was 2,000 square feet or less, something small, a sort of moment, a coffee shop, whatever that may be, to serve the people in that community and activate the corner so people in Gas Worx can cross Nebraska, vice versa. And you said you would love to, but it's not that simple because the code and some of the red tape we talked about earlier makes it actually very difficult. And you were almost alluding to like there's kind of an impossibility to making that happen there. So detail that out for me. Why is it very difficult to achieve retail?
Yeah, so I just talked about like how Ybor has special zoning. Like for example, on 7th Avenue, there's no setback, right? There's no parking requirements. Here and in most of the city of Tampa, you've got a suburban code that, suburban code in an urban setting, right? So when I have a commercial use there, it triggers parking requirements. It triggers buffers between the residential and commercial use. It triggers landscape buffers. There's all these challenges, ADA compliance between around all the areas like that end up taking up so much space that like people think, oh, well, why not just lose 1 or 2 townhomes and put a 1,500 square foot commercial space there, right? Becomes life safety issues with fire, and because I wouldn't lose 2, I'd lose 10, and now it's not economically feasible.
If it was under the Ybor overlay though,
It's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier. And, we've looked into all different kinds of mixed use, live work stuff.
Even for this site in particular?
We did not look at we did look at mixed use here, and we do have a mixed use component, because we have a grandfathered building down on phase 1,
but
which
as
our
it's
office
built,
is now in.
That would be illegal to replicate today.
Well, we have a planned development there, so it's through a planned development, you can make up your own zoning basically, but for a planned development, you have to have a hardship, and our hardship in that instance is the building's already
there.
Yeah.
Right.
So to say, hey, I want to build it this way, they'd say it's not already there. That's a self-inflicted hardship, which is true to the code.
Right.
The issue is with the code, and so we didn't look at mixed use on this site. I'm sorry, we didn't look at live work as far as being in the same building, but we've looked at it in others of saying, hey, let's make these townhomes live work. That'd be really cool. More people are working from home. There's more, small entrepreneurs, architect, lawyer, whatever it might be, yoga studio. Problem is now, you got your building code stuff, which is a Florida thing. That's, on a larger scale, which, starts to be fire separation requirements, ADA requirements. But, even parking, for example, it's like, every commercial space, when I was working with a site, it was actually on Lois Avenue with the city on this. They said, hey, we need an ADA compliant parking space for every single one of these units to be able to have commercial space on the first floor, office space, residential office, whatever it might be, which is just, you don't have the space for it.
Is that a Tampa code or is that a Florida code?
Well, I don't want to I don't want to misspeak here, but I've seen it done in other municipalities.
Right.
So are those municipalities ignoring a code or interpreting something differently, or is city Tampa code different? I think it's a city thing.
I'm going to speculate and say it's probably some sort of a gray area.
It was just over a year ago.
Attorney, right?
I can't remember.
Where the city attorney's office would have to sort of do some value metric on risk, like maybe that could trigger some sort of an ADA issue for the city if they didn't have that in the code. I'm sure they're looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, ADA compliance is not a city thing, but parking is.
Parking is, yes.
And there's plenty of zonings that don't require parkings and are still ADA compliant. Well, go back to 7th Avenue, like the no parking requirement, but all of the units and spaces need to be ADA compliant.
Yeah.
But why do I need to have why do I even need to have a parking spot for every single one of the units?
Well, it's a good question. And it sort of leads me to what you said earlier. And my whole point in bringing this up is, the way Ybor and frankly, every American city grew and developed, we didn't have all these code structures. And so you were able to go trade the cigar with the guy for the steak, and you were a part of the diverse community where you walk outside and there's all these different businesses. And I think people crave that today, and they didn't crave it when we were growing up. They craved maybe a suburban life, although you're from DC, you can still appreciate what I'm saying about the suburbanization of American cities. Today, there's a ton of every demographic in our population in America that crave a really, really good streetscape and urban lifestyle. And that's very hard for a city to achieve if it has an antiquated suburbanized code overlaid on top of an early 20th and 19th century city fabric. If you could snap your fingers and tear up all of our infrastructure and redo the streets with our current code, it wouldn't look the way it looks. It would look like Wesley Chapel, it would look like Hunter's Green, but that's not the case. And we can't turn back the clock. So to me, we need to figure out a way with this new land development code rewrite to make something as simple as putting a little 1,500 square foot, 2,000 square foot coffee shop on a 79 unit housing development possible without triggering A, B, C, D, E, F all the way to Z red tape along the way, to where you probably evaluate that and go, screw it, I'll just do 2 more townhome units and call it a day.
So listen, I've been in front of city council and been developing projects in the city of Tampa for almost 20 years. I've gone through, you know, seen different leadership changes throughout, and was developing when Tampa felt like a much smaller city than it is now. First of all, we've got the fuel. People want to be here. We all know that. We've got a junked up engine, and I think that staff gets the grunt of a lot of frustration from people, including myself at times. Problem is, like, if you got a great quarterback in a bad system, that quarterback's not succeed. So I can't even like really. I mean, there are certain people and staff, like I love working with Ron Vila and Dennis Fernandez at the ARC and Historic. They're great, and there's other all-stars too. But it's hard to judge how good the team is when the system's broken, and that's and the system starts. What I'm speaking specifically is with our zoning code is a real issue. There's been other municipalities that are doing it better. Look, our problem is. You talked about the desire to go to suburbs, and people wanted to go to suburbs because there was no protection, right? You could put a coal factory next to a house, and people were getting sick. So that regulation is important, but overregulation now is doing two things. It's making things way more expensive to develop, and it's sucking the ability for us to develop real culture in a city, and that's probably what's frustrating me the most. And this is, a national problem, which is creating to this housing affordability crisis, right? All these restrictions. But there are municipalities doing better than Tampa is, ones that I've worked in across Florida, I'd say Sarasota, Orlando, Fort Myers, St. Petersburg. My experience there is they have a much more black and white zoning code. And I'll take Sarasota for an example. They brought in an urban planner, Andre Dewani, who's really famous urban planner, who basically has a lot of thoughts on zoning that go back to older cities that were more formed to walkability, and density and other impacts of uses is really based on infrastructure ability. It's like, so Sarasota put in a density bonus up into a certain amount of infrastructure. And that's when you saw the Rosemary district there really start to take off. And I just want a code that's improved, that's more black and white, that says, hey, you can get density bonuses if you do affordable housing. You can have parking waivers if you do mixed uses. And we have some of that in some of the form-based codes, like in Seminole Heights, for example, right? We need to see a more sweeping, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for, but sweeping, putting that into place across the board in our urban comprehensive, thank you, in our urban communities, that developers know this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, because a lot of it's not a secret that we're seeing a lot of resignations to the city, a lot of turnover, which creates even more challenges for the community, for developers, for everybody. And there's a lot of, it's no secret, there's a lot of tension there, right? Whether it be between staff and council, developers and staff, developers and council, mayor, whatever. And that's because we have so much that's driven to a public hearing,
Yes.
And staff is, I think, sometimes hesitant to make decisions and rather things go to public hearing. And if it's inconsistent and there's a noisy minority that's for something, it gets approved. If it's consistent, and that's the word staff uses in the report, inconsistent or consistent, which basically means, does it have one waiver or not? Is there anything out of code? It becomes inconsistent, right? It could be one thing, right? You could be asking for a 2-foot setback. It's inconsistent, right? And so it creates this tension. And there's always going to be some need for a planned development. Like I said earlier, a planned development is supposed to be when there's a hardship. Instead, we just use it to make up our own zoning. We need to have more administrative, common sense policies that are put into place that takes away this conflict. And because a lot of city council are not zoning specialists. They're not. They come from all different backgrounds, different work experience, which is great. That's important. It shouldn't be a board of
No.
developers or
Hell no.
architects.
No.
No, it shouldn't. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and the right leadership can get it done, and I think can really create an environment where there's less animosity and friction.
There's also a value to having everything clean and smooth, because the neighbors, the public, and just people that live in these areas that are high growth, they should sort of know what's going on too. I think the way things are now creates an ambiguous nature to certain neighborhoods. And so
Mm-hmm.
members of the community are shocked to see what comes in front of them. But if there was a more clear and concise, straightforward code, one that was less antiquated, then the neighbors and prospective buyers in these neighborhoods would have a better understanding of what can be built. And with technology today, like, so first of all, clearly the city recognizes that this is a problem, because
Mm-hmm.
Abby Feely and her department have taken on the charge and moved forward with a land
Yep.
development code rewrite. So the
Right.
good news is the city recognizes we have an antiquated
100%.
code and we need to rewrite it, which is fantastic.
Agreed.
They've spent, or they've contracted Clarion, which is a business that rewrites codes all around the country, to come into Tampa and help us with this. I think they've spent $1 million to contract with this organization, which apparently is a good deal. It's a lot of work to rewrite an entire municipal code. And so that getting worked out will probably hopefully alleviate a lot of
I
these
think so.
issues that we've talked about, not just in this episode, but throughout this entire show, throughout this whole experience. But with technology today, you'd have to imagine some sort of scenario where neighbors in this, neighborhood we're looking at here, or prospective buyers looking to move into a neighborhood, could click on a parcel in some sort of a program and have an AI generated max, this is what could be built in this neighborhood.
Oh, you're living in 2050, man.
Something like that. Let's use
You're living in the
technology
future.
so it's
Yeah,
clear for everybody. I mean,
yeah.
obviously you're speaking with your developer hat on, because this is what you do professionally. But I think what you and I are both advocating for here not only is for developers and builders, but it's also just members of the public who have a clear understanding of what can be built in their neighborhood.
It's for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Because we got to clear up this gunk up engine, because there's a lot that we're excited about, right? But for a lot of these challenges, man, I'm exhausted. I'm fatigued. It sucks the creativity out of you. You start saying like,
Right.
I'm just going to build this box because I know I can get it through. I know the city has approved it. And even then I'm met with challenges. I've had a lot of challenges on this project, and I've built this product several times, so it's really and what it does is that affects the community, right? Because we're really lucky in this city. We've got, I've mentioned Daryl, who's doing a beautiful project. We've got guys like Blake Casper who are doing passion projects like Oxford, and you've got, Chaz Bruck and Adam Harden, who did armature works, and there's a plethora of really these developers who have given us community assets. You got the Padikapati and Patel's families on Davis Island who are redeveloping a lot of it. And this is not, of course, they're all want to make money, but these are passion projects.
Yeah.
And like, how easy do you think it was to go to a bank and say, I want to open a food hall where nobody is
Right.
here?
Yeah.
And
Well, look what even Jeff Vennick, look what he did.
Manic, right. And
All the above.
So all those things are gifts to our community. These groups that I mentioned happen to have a lot of money, right?
Sure.
And they can overcome a lot of the challenges. But who is it impossible for are the mom and pop developers, restaurant owners. I mean, how many stories have we heard about people trying to open up a restaurant and just can't get to the red tape by the time they open their X amount of budget? They've gone through their savings, they've blown through their dream. And who does that hurt? That hurts us, because I know one thing that I wish we had a whole lot more of were mom and pop good restaurants, right? Like, I love all the cool restaurant groups out there that, are opening up new exciting concepts all the time. But I starve for those ones where you're walking in and, there's a mom and pop who've opened a small restaurant or something like that. And, if it's not a second gen restaurant space, I mean, the red tape, I'm as a developer having so much time. This is what I do. And I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but like
Sure.
these people, I feel for them when I see the challenges they go through. And so we need to make it better for them. That's the American dream.
Yeah.
That's, you know,
It's also what gives a place its identity.
for
You
sure.
know, I think cities aren't defined by national tenancy. You know, if Chipotle wants to come into this market or some other large national tenant, they're going to have the time and the lawyers and the capital to
Right.
be able to wait and go through whatever system the local municipality has to get their product or their service in a market. But a little coffee shop, a little boutique, you know, they're not going to have that time or money. And you just described a situation where you were probably happy and excited to provide a space for a local small business. But because of the red tape and because of all the
Now,
complex structures of the code, it doesn't make sense for you to even give the
yeah, you start asking
opportunity.
yourself, is this worth time away from my family? Like I said, I'm not leaving a legacy where anyone's going to remember this. Like, you know, or do I take the less creative, you know? And as a developer, my number one job is managing risk for capital, you know? And so you just say, hey, this would be fun, but it's too risky.
Look what this country built when we didn't have, you know, 90% of the codes we have today. Look at the architecture that we used to build in this country. Look at the creativity that was expressed in some of these buildings, even here in Tampa. Look at Plant Hall, the University of Tampa.
There's a big movement behind this, right? Nationally, about deregulating some of the zoning codes that have just gone too far, and that the power of NIMBYism has had, and it's a big issue here. You know, when you see some of these people, like I mentioned, putting passion projects forward, and they're met with so much, you know, negative energy, I'll
Sure.
say, against
Yeah.
it. Like that, you know, I get it. There's always people who are going to be against change, and people should have their own entitled to their own opinion. But we need strong leadership that when people say like, this makes sense, this is to the zoning code, this is
Right.
something that should be allowed, like, you know, just because someone needs one small waiver, like,
Sure. Well, this is why a broken code is bad for everyone.
yeah,
You know, it's bad.
creates conflict.
It's conflict, and it's bad for the NIMBYs too. The NIMBYs have merit because they're operating and they're looking at a broken code.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're right. You know,
Right.
this is completely against the code. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But the code itself is broken.
A lot of time that's not the argument that's made. And in city council, I mean, I've watched and been to too many, you know, it's like, you know, it's like you can hear someone argue, you know, there was some hotels that have been proposed or
Yeah.
that have been big news, right? And they said, oh, well, I'd be happy if it's a Ritz, but I don't want it to be
Sure.
a Holiday Inn or whatever. You don't get to choose.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
a use is a use.
Well, I think what's happened is the community that opposes a lot of these projects have been victims of bad development in their own neighborhood. And what we're describing and what you've said today is how some of the challenges of the code sucks the creativity and sucks some of the design forward elements out of decision-making process. And not even speaking about you, let's just say in general,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Which is facts, right? I think the more line items you have to check and the more headache you have to go through, the less the cost, the less mental capacity anyone has to be creative and to create a good product for the community. And so some of these, I'll call them bad developments or inappropriate developments, have been built in areas that pisses people off. And so when a good project comes forward with merit and someone who's ambitious and creative and has the capital to put out one of these projects, they're met with opposition because the people are fearful that things aren't going to go the way the developer is presenting them. But all of that stems from a code that doesn't line up with where we're at as a city, where we're at as a country, where we're at culturally, the way people want to live today. The code was last comprehensively rewritten in 1987.
Right.
I mean, that is a completely different world and a way of life today. If you
This
were
is
to
long overdue.
long overdue, and if you were to show people from that era Water Street. They would never believe something like that would be
Right.
successful. And that's because the culture, the way people live today, literally the way people want to live is different.
And that's the fun part about real estate, is like figuring out the way that people want to live and getting to be part of that for sure.
And trying to make a bet on it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but clearly it's moving towards a more urban environment. And I think, I remember 6-8 years ago, whenever Water Street was first announced, there was a lot of speculation. People were like, that's never going to work. Who the hell's going to go move to that neighborhood? But you go there now and the place is totally jam-packed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super successful. Probably one of the best examples of an urban neighborhood I've ever seen. And I've been to a lot of different places. And that's what Daryl and James and Gas Worx and you see in this Ybor district, is a iteration of sort of what once really built that place, which was diverse cultures coming together, creating goods and services. Like my family had a hardware store, other families have grocers and all these different things. And it's these small family businesses that support each other, that are engaged in their community, engaged in city politics. That's what made that place so strong and so successful. And I see, and that's just human beings, right? It's not like, oh, that could only work in 1895. No. That's humans. It would absolutely work today. We just need the right structure for it. And to your point earlier about the code in Ybor, like I think one of the reasons why Ybor has had this amazing resurgence in the last like 5 or 10 years is because the code allows you to be very creative. Like Harry Caiaphas, remember that guy, David? Were you in the studio for that shoot, or was Tyler still here doing that? I think Tyler was here. That guy came from New York, loved the culture, wants to be a part of it, and built Sterling Cigar Lounge.
Yeah.
The only reason he was able to build it like that is because the code, the 7th Avenue code. Should we look at, expanding that code to other areas in the urban core? I think that would be entirely appropriate. It's sort of proven successful. It's expensive as hell to build something like that. I actually asked him, I said, could you build this today? He's like, there's no way. It's too expensive. That's the other thing too about this entire conversation. We have market conditions that are so inhibitive to growth. Land is expensive, construction's expensive, insurance, all these factors, debt is extremely expensive. And so you've got these natural market conditions that gunk up the engine, right? Gunk up the engine. And so when you add on these codes onto it, it's like the whole gears get screwed up and stop turning. And maybe the only thing you see is the larger developments. Those usually move. That's a different engine. Those wheels turn sort of independently, but the mom and pops are really the ones that are going to struggle to move
I have
through.
a harder time now getting approvals than when I was a bright-eyed 20-year-old going in having no idea what I'm doing. And I hire, engineers and architects with great track records and experience. And part of it is there's definitely more going through. So there's more applications and all of that. But this is something we need to do something about, and I'm glad to see that the city is working on the code. And I know that they've taken a lot of public input on it and are doing workshops. And it's how we're going to write our history for our next video. Like I said, it hasn't been done since 1987. And I think responsible development is really when the past and present have a conversation about the future. Because one thing that we forget as like a public is like, we're in a moment in history now, right? They're going to look back at the history books and talk about the COVID boom, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like, at Florida COVID boom, like everybody came here and Tampa grew and Water Street came to be and all of that. Like, that's history, right?
Yeah.
But we can't be too hung up on that moment to not think about the future. And we got to pay homage to our past.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, and I think there were other factors too at that era, right? We had Tom Brady and Tampa Super Bowl. It's like, how could those not be good times, right?
It was fun, yeah.
Of course there was an explosion, but what about next year? What if we have an economic softening, which we do?
We do.
Can we rely on that growth to sustain us over the years and over the decades? I think the land development code rewrite is very timely. And maybe one of the most important things the city's done in the last 40 years is comprehensively rewrite that municipal code and be forward thinking, in the way people live and in the culture, and certainly look at the past, what worked and what didn't work, and recognize the fabric we have too. Recognize we have old infrastructure and a grid system, which is an asset, really.
Big asset.
Big asset. There's a lot of communities that don't have the tight grid we do, that wish they had the tight grid. Go to Atlanta, look at what they're dealing with, and look at the growth they've had. We have so much merit as a community too. I think, it's like there's so many municipalities that pray and beg for the private sector demand that we have here. People are chomping at the bit to be a part of this community. And why not make it as approachable as we can? Not so, JP Morgan gets a headquarters here, but so this place, Casa Azul, we've brought them up a few times. Shout out Casa Azul. It's like so little businesses and little coffee shops can have an opportunity to grow and expand. That's what it's about. That's how you create a cool factor in something real to be a part of.
Yeah. I mean, listen, right? What's the government's job here is to improve quality of life, right? And I mean, I feel like Tampa's a safe place. We've got really good branches of our municipality in place, and very fortunate for that. But big part of that comes down to affordability, and I think there's things that we can do within our control. Here's a really interesting concept. Actually, I forwarded you an article about this. What's the deal with these minimum lot sizes, right? Why is RS50, right? So in the city of Tampa, your minimum lot size is 50 feet width, unless you're in, like Ybor has some 25-foot lots. West Tampa has some grandfathered smaller lots. What's wrong with a 25-foot lot and building a house that's 15 feet wide for a smaller starter home next to a lot that's 70 feet? It's just because people don't want a small house next to a big house, because they think like if someone doesn't have as much money as you, they're not as good as a person as you are, or it's going to bring your home value down. And like now we're just talking a bigger picture, but I like to talk about these things of like things that's wrong with our culture in general. Like I got no problem with any of that. I think that it's important. I'd love to have more neighborhoods where you've got a mansion next to a starter home, and where those kids are getting to know each other and we're less in a bubble, right? And that, I get if you want to put that in a suburb out in Wesley Chapel, but like within the city of Tampa, we should be promoting inclusion, economic inclusion, racial inclusion across the board, and lot sizes is a good way to start with that, right?
Well,
but people just say like, oh, I don't want a lot next to me that's a 30-foot lot. Why?
I definitely want to talk about this if you want to.
Yeah. Why?
Well, I think in general, this country is scarred from some of the redlining and some of the issues we've had with pushing certain demographics of people from certain neighborhoods.
Exactly.
And there's also the value, right? And this doesn't translate well into more urban and tighter neighborhoods. Like Hyde Park is a good example of an area that has high value and high demand, but that's attributed to the mix of use and the mix of housing, which is really, really interesting. Meaning you can have duplexes, quadplexes, apartments, condos, townhomes, single families, and commercial.
Yep.
All walkable, and it's one of the most in-demand areas, in high-priced areas in the entire city. So it proves that everything can happen at once. However, when you talk about larger 6, 8, 10,000 square foot homes on half-acre and up lots, like areas like around West Shore, Beach Park, those are estate-sized properties that, if you were to have starter homes in those communities, those property values would be diminished.
Why? What diminishes them?
What diminishes them is the exclusive nature of the neighborhood.
I mean, I don't know that there's data behind that, because what you just said about Hyde Park, right? You're getting more price per square foot
This is
potentially there
this
for a
yeah.
6,000 square foot house than you might in a neighborhood that has 6,000 square foot houses, because everyone wants to live there, and there are the people that can afford it who are willing to pay the premium, and there's less of them mixed in. So, I think you're just kind of playing devil's advocate and talking about it, but I, I think it's bullshit. I think that we should
Can you
be
get a
more.
map going, David?
I think we should have a more inclusive zoning code, not just in Tampa, across the country, that allows this. And it gets the biggest, like you say, I'm really blessed and fortunate that I grew up in DC.
Get closer.
I grew up in DC. Thanks. My mom was in the military for over 30 years.
Wow.
My
What branch?
public health service. My hero. Awesome. My dad was a civil rights lawyer, dedicated his life
Wow.
to helping people, who are marginalized. I'm grandchild of Holocaust survivor, so now we're going on like a personal level. I believe in inclusion. I believe that a lot of I feel like kids who grow up in a neighborhood with less.
Mm-hmm.
If you grow up in project housing and you don't know anyone with a real career, how are you expected to go and get a real career? So I really believe in zoning codes that have mixed income requirements, that have mixed housing, like I'm saying, like put a 25-foot lot, let a quadplex be next to a 6,000 square foot house. And there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with me, and I'm
Sure.
totally okay with that. But some of the richest people I know, or some of the worst people I know, some of the nicest people I know, or some of the poorest people I know.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I got to grow up in a place with a mix of all of that. And I think those types of places in our country are diminishing. There's less and less of them.
Right.
It's becoming more and more bubble, and I think that's bad.
Well, you are certainly coming from a perspective that it has oomph behind your points here. I mean, your dad was a civil rights lawyer. Wow. So he spent a career defending.
Still is. Yeah.
Still is.
Yeah.
And of course, your Jewish heritage as well. I wanted to pause real quick. Let's go to the Cuban sandwich. Does the Jewish culture have anything to do with the Cuban sandwich?
They say like the
mustard, right?
And the pickle, but that's also German. They say, But there was a big Jewish influence in Bookie Buckman, like
right?
We talked about.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
They were
you.
the merchants. The Jews came from Alabama and Louisiana, where you had that's why you have the New Orleans style, and a lot of the buildings on 7th Avenue have Jewish names on the top of them. Some of it's because they had their stores on the first floor, and then they lived above them. And those were the Jewish merchants, my understanding, mostly from like Louisiana, where you see that stuff in New Orleans. And that's why it says, it looks like Bourbon Street. And, I think like one of the things I learned about Ybor is that didn't come first. Like a lot of people think 7th Avenue came first. No, it's like anything. The jobs came first, right?
Yeah.
The cigar factories came, people were living there. And then they said, I need a place to shop. And the merchants came.
An entire district and really its own independent city supported by a manufacturing base. And those people came, like my great-great-grandparents were cigar workers. Then they brought their family, and their family opened little stores, and sort of the rest is history. But what we're talking about is sort of what I was playing devil's advocate, and really just being, I think, more than devil's advocate, authentic about the reality of human nature. It's not a part that I love about human nature. And obviously this conversation is tricky. There's like fair housing laws, and it's
philosophy. We're talking about philosophy.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to sell you a home and steer you any certain direction. I'm just saying it's a tricky conversation, and no one wants to talk about the reality, but people that live in those large homes most always advocate for other large homes to be next
Correct.
to them. And it's more than race. It's more than culture. It's income. And people
Correct.
that have high income and live in those 8,000 square foot homes believe, and they're probably correct, that their real estate values would be diminished if smaller homes were built around them in the same immediate vicinity, like the same street across the street. Now you can do it in a way where you can build product in an area certainly.
Hmm.
But when you go to a place like, it's hard for us to say here in Tampa because we don't necessarily have a district with big estates. You do have some on Davis Islands and on West Shore Boulevard. And of course, Bayshore Boulevard has some of those. But places like Dallas, Texas, you go to those neighborhoods where like every home is
Hmm.
25,000 square feet. When you get on that level, those people want to be around other homes of similar value. It's like,
I think capitalism will take the wheel there, right? Like you've seen it in New York City, right? I know a guy
mhm.
in New York City. He'll buy two sixplexes connected to each other and join them together and create a mega urban mansion and sell it, right? And you know, and you used the Hyde Park example where you've got quadplexes, and
Yeah,
because now what you have is in a neighborhood that might allow these, that has these big lots and big houses. Down the street, you might have a zoning for multifamily. And so it's like
sure.
instead you have one 200 unit multifamily project and, on the main maybe road with some commercial zoning and mixed use zoning. And then you have big houses down the road from there. I just prefer a neighborhood where it's more mixed in. And that's what they call
Yeah.
like the missing middle, it's just part of
Yeah,
like what we
100%.
develop, So it's a, philosophy, but I don't generally buy into that it would diminish values.
Mhm.
I think some of the best neighborhoods just have these things grandfathered because you have that quadplex that has only one parking spot or no parking spots,
I
and
I think also people's greatest fear is people, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
People's greatest fear is other people that may do harm to them and their family. And people's perception is unfortunately based on culture and race, but also based on income. And so there's this weird push and pull between people wanting to live in a certain community, and when that community is being changed in any sort of way, there's this reaction to it.
yeah.
And you see that across the
That's
board.
never going to change.
That's never going to change. It's human nature. And it's interesting to explore too, like Hyde Park in particular. Could you build that today? Could you suggest having quadplexes and duplexes and single families in an area that's not Hyde Park? Like, let's say,
Yeah, North Hyde Park has some multifamily zoning. Like North
good
Hyde Park
example. Yes.
is, as it sits today, probably my favorite urban neighborhood. I think other neighborhoods will get there and evolve. And it's so interesting because that's just been a natural progression, no form based code there.
Right.
You've had industrial next to multifamily, next to single family, all mixed in. And now you have these like villas and all these other
Yeah.
creative restaurants coming in. And you have independent gyms like Suka that are super popular. And
Yeah.
it's like all this culture that's happening there because they actually have a pretty, I think, diverse zoning code in there. Now, there's been lots of PDs and waivers, and everything's been
Well, it's all
a
quite
battle along the
dense.
way, but it's quite dense.
Yeah.
And you've got some scale with some of the apartments that have been approved. So I think that's a good example. But like, you don't see quadplexes being built. You see townhomes, which is like what we do. Our code doesn't, and then part of it is cost. It's not just code.
Well, I wanted to
It's
ask.
so expensive to build like 4 apartments or 6
So I wanted to
apartments.
ask you about this
Right.
specifically. Instead of doing townhomes, 30 given units, let's
Right.
say, why not build 3 or 4 stories of fee simple condominiums or even apartments?
But yeah, yeah. Well, fee simple, they wouldn't be condos. Can't be fee simple. Um, that's the condominium ownership or fee simple ownership. So
Fee simple is where you own the lot,
you own the, yeah.
right?
You might have deed restrictions on it, but you own the land below you and the air above you, right?
Right. You seen that
Um,
reel where it's like, if I buy a piece of property, do I own the ground to the center of the earth? And
well,
how
I
far
haven't.
does the
I got
we,
to check it
yeah,
out.
it's, but you talked earlier about the value is having ownership stake. You
Hmm.
kind of spoke about why you're a proponent of that style of living, but
I just
generally,
think there's demand for it and not a lot of
sure.
supply.
But
That's really,
but generally in the city,
Mhm.
why do we see more townhomes rather than 3 or 4 story little apartment buildings?
Cost of construction.
Cost.
I mean, you got to put in an elevator, right? You got to have fire sprinklers now because like you don't have these block walls separating you guys. So there's just fixed expenses that come in play for an apartment building. If you're 3 stories or 12, you can see this against a commercial too, right? That you are going to have the same costs if you build 100 units. I might be able to have the same
Wow.
one elevator, right? So it's just cost prohibitive.
Mm.
And also from a operating standpoint, right? Like, okay, you have certain management aspects, maintenance aspects that you're going to need for 10 units or you're going to need for 100 units.
It just makes more sense. Like you said, I think 39 units on the 4 acres, was it?
79, yeah, 4 acres.
So the 4 acres was the 2 separate pieces of property in total.
Correct, yeah.
That's a lot less units than you could build if you built a building, certainly.
Yeah. See, mine worked because it was a weird shape and it wasn't
Right.
adjoining and all of that. And that's where there's opportunity for townhomes. But like I showed you when we were looking at aerial, most of the blocks are big, wide blocks where the
Right.
value is going to be much more to an apartment or condo developer.
There's been some municipalities that have gotten rid of the elevator requirement for or what
It's a second staircase requirement.
single staircase is what I'm
So
talking
I
about.
built in Ybor City, my first office I built, which is it's a cool building. It was on 20th Street and 6th Avenue, 3 stories. Okay, about 7,000 square feet. We had to have 2 staircases and an elevator. Right, I couldn't build that today. No way I could build that today. I had to vault stormwater underground. Right,
You couldn't build it today for what reason?
It'd be way too expensive. I mean, construction costs post-COVID is just eliminating the ability to do a lot of things that you could do before, and it's a real problem for
The city.
It's a real
Everything.
problem. It's not just a city; it's everywhere for
Nationwide.
for our housing crisis.
Right.
But I'm talking specifically about commercial use. So I've also read about that, and that's like just a point. And you have two. It's a life safety issue while you have these 2 staircases. And I'm not proposing to get rid of elevator. You have to have a ADA compliant way to get people up. But that's a 7,000 square foot building, 2,000 square feet per floor, 3 stories. And is it an over regulation? At what point are like that we need to have 2 staircases? And there's other like things that, I redeveloped, like I said, a warehouse into apartments or a school into apartments, and it's not a hurricane rated building, but I've had to put in certain hurricane elements like right into it, so it's like the whole building will blow away, but this one truss will still be there. Where does it stop making sense?
Well, I think if safety is at the forefront, it will always be the case that they will push further into regulations for safety. Like the new thing now is with the radios, right? Like you have to build with certain materials so that the radios can pass between the walls of a building. This might be something new. David, if you want to try to find that, there's an article about it. I read it. Someone sent me information on it. But if safety is always at the forefront, then we're always going to have these building regulations that keep getting imposed. And to your point, at what point is it too far? At what point is it too expensive to do so? So also, David, could you pull up an article? There's been a ton of press about, if you just type in like Austin, I know Austin's tried to eliminate the double stair requirement for, 4 stories or 5 stories, certainly not above that, whatever. Because
then you just only see large scale development, right?
Yeah.
You're not seeing a 6-unit apartment building. You're not seeing the 7,000 square foot office.
What is the code? Is it over like 3 stories? You have to have 2 staircases?
I think it's 3 stories, but it's also like distance to the stairs. There's more, than one thing.
So let's see. So Austin City Council signs off on more single stair buildings. This is April this year. This article has been edited to reflect that the city may look at the feasibility of single stair buildings up to 6 stories. So Austin City Council members approved a code amendment that allows more units to be built using only one central staircase. Advocates of single stair housing say it will create more flexibility in how smaller complexes are built, making them more affordable.
Exactly.
And so we don't have this, from my understanding, anywhere in any municipality in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, this is from my understanding, this is a Florida code, not a Tampa code issue.
Mm. So if the city wanted to do something about this, they would probably be preempted by the state of Florida,
I don't know for sure, but that's my
but
understanding. Yeah.
potentially and probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, interesting. I would the argument, it says here, the argument most frequently made against this single stair housing is public safety, which is what we talked about. Having two staircases allow for different access points for first responders, also creates two evacuation routes for residents.
Right.
Completely logical. Absolutely makes sense.
And
Yeah.
it's a tough,
Sure, it's a balance.
it's a balance.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but again, kind of back to what we've talked about for a majority of the conversation is we got to start thinking creatively. And it sounds like you're not advocating for this, and really neither am I, but I just want us to be more creative when it comes to these policies.
We need to think about it.
We need to think
have
about
the conversation, the dialogue.
Because let's be real, the construction costs aren't going back to
No.
pre-COVID levels.
No.
Dirt's not getting cheaper.
No.
You might have some interest rates slip, which they're predicted to do, but they ain't going back to 2, 3, 4%,
Nope.
5%. So a lot of these things in development and construction will largely remain the way they are, probably the rest of our careers. And so what can local government do? And by the way, we don't have to be pioneers. Like, let's try to track this with Austin, see how it works out. I think Minneapolis too, David, if you pull up other municipalities, I think Minneapolis has tried to do this too. And so maybe we sort of watch what happens. Does it work? Does it create life safety issues? We certainly wouldn't want to cross that line. But this new thing with the radios, when you start adding layers on to an already really tough process, it's a recipe for things to sort of slow down to a point where
we just are
mom and pops can't get going.
We're in a really challenging environment, right? It's like we all love, right? People talk, I'm traveling to Europe, and it's like you got to go downstairs to get to the bathroom in most of the restaurants, right? And they open a window, there's no exhaust vent, and you don't have the same health safety regulations, and
ADA is very hard in the city of Rome when you've got 2,000-year-old
exactly.
streets.
Yeah, no. So I mean, it's just a circumstance. It's the circumstance we're in. It's not an easy solution. And to your point, like there should be creativity, innovation. I think one of the most frustrating things about construction is we've seen the least innovation than any other industry in home building specifically. We're still building homes the same way we did 50, 60 years ago, but maybe with even more regulation, right? Oh, we better make sure we have more screws. We have more, like when a lot of these like frame houses that have been here for 60 years are still standing and whatnot. So, I mean, I think the codes, and not just in Florida, are inhibiting innovation, which is a really bad thing. And we need to find a solution for that, right? Because we should just be everyone thinks like we should just be plopping up, and like I get a call every 3 months, like, oh, have you seen this new modular home system and this and that? I'm like, I'm not the guy who's smart enough or rich enough to figure it out. When someone else does, I'll start going alongside them.
Standardization in this country is the reason why we've enjoyed a relatively low price level for some incredible technology and products. And standardization in building was meant for the same thing. You've got the drywall, standard size, you've got the 2x4s, the trusses that get delivered. It's like all of it was made to be more efficient, easier logistics, and less expensive. And unfortunately, it seems like those materials are just as expensive as any other way to build. It's not like
and then
using
in today's environment, you got tariffs messing up the supply chain. You got, immigration issues messing up labor. Those have had major impacts recently on cost.
Yeah, big time, right? And it doesn't seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, meaning like it doesn't seem like, well, if we could solve this one thing, lumber and drywall and all those materials go down by 50%, back to what they were pre-COVID. It just seems like inflation has sort of set this new standard, and we operate in the environment we're in as this is sort of the new normal. I just think that, I don't know how my producer here is going to be able to buy a home. He's not going to be able to pay what I paid when he's my age. Only 5 or 6 years ago when I was looking around for a home with my then girlfriend, now wife, what I paid now is 100% more than
Yeah.
what I thought I would only have to pay 5 or 6 years ago. And so when I bought my house last summer, I was thinking about my firstborn. I was like, what is he going to have to pay for a house in Tampa when he's 30 years
You're
old?
going to give them 50-year mortgages.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's your thought on 50-year mortgages?
I mean, it's, I still have to think about it some more. Like it'd be good for business, of course, right?
Yeah.
It would create more opportunity for home ownership, but it'd be very difficult to build equity, right? And I'm not sure how well it meshes with today's youth and culture because they like flexibility. They like being able to move around. So you buy a house with a 50-year mortgage, you're not going to have
3%
if
down.
something comes that happens in the market, right,
Right.
and through your trading costs, like you're not going to have any equity. You're going to be stuck in your home. So does it create now like people walking away from homes after owning it for 5-6 years because there's been a dip in the market? So I think it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
There's other countries that just have lower interest rates for primary users, like
That's a better idea.
Spain,
Yeah.
right? Like you can get like a 2% interest
Yeah.
rate. UK has very low
But that would make
interest
too much
rates.
sense, Mike.
That-
America does things a little different. I think it's the same story with anything in this country. We've with good nature and good intention tried to make things more available for people.
Right.
No different from car loans,
Yeah.
no different from making student loans a federal initiative so every kid can have the chance to get a loan to go to school, right? But as we've opened up more supply, we've created more demand, and with that you have an increase in the price level. And so if there's any given home and there's 10 different people and 8 can afford it, well, introduce a 50-year mortgage in the mix and then all 10 people can afford
Yeah.
it. What does that do? That drives the price level up over
Yeah,
time.
and we're gonna get rid of
It's the
property
same
tax
story.
too.
It's going to happen, man. When
So-
when my grandfather bought his first home on Davis Islands, it was like $20,000. They didn't even have a 30-year mortgage.
Right.
I think at the time they were doing 5 and 10 years. The 15-year was introduced to make housing more affordable. Then the 30-year mortgage. I think it's inevitable. I think they're going to have a 50-year product.
Banks can do it. There's nothing stopping them
Right.
from doing it. I try to educate myself, and I think that's a real what the long-term dynamic is of that. I'm not sure about, so it's hard to have a good opinion. But I do think our government has a habit of putting in short-term solutions that create long-term problems.
Ain't that the truth?
Because
Yeah.
they want to immediately appease their constituency, which I understand. It's you got people who are upset and you're trying to make them happy, and sometimes it's all with goodwill. They don't know about we just don't know, but like I said before, the past, present, we need to have a conversation about the future when we're making these decisions. And I'm not a politician, I'm not a public servant, I'm just a citizen, tax-paying citizen, and who enjoys having these conversations and thinking about them. So,
well, I appreciate you coming on the show because some of these conversations are hard to have, but they are. I think we've done a constructive job today. I think both of us, before we went on air, talked about having a constructive conversation. And some of these conversations are hard to have, especially when you talk about a duplex next to a large home. That, I think that the genesis of that question and those dynamics, that's a human problem that's been going on for thousands of years.
yeah.
Is that going to get solved on this podcast? Of course not, right? But to your point in the very beginning of this show about how conversations are the start of everything important. It's
I
like,
just think a lot of people haven't thought about that.
we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. It's like, I think the way to success with some of these districts in the city is a look back at the past. And I think there's a lot of wounds in this country regarding the past. There's so many groups that have been disenfranchised and have had unbelievably tough times. Every group that immigrated to this country was discriminated against, and some way more than others. And when we talk about practices of the past that were good, that worked, we shouldn't shy away from them. Ybor City is the perfect example of all these different cultures living together and all these different housing types and different businesses. And, that's just good human nature. Sometimes when we talk about the past, all of the wounds get brought up, and there are a lot of wounds, but I think as this land development code rewrite gets really kicked off, hopefully next year, as Gas Worx phase 1 gets completed and people start living in the district, I think it's a really good opportunity to continue to have these conversations about what the district looked like, what made it successful, and what could make it successful in the future.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, man. What did you pull up here, David? The Architect's Newspaper, One Step Forward. Single stair reform has energized North American architects, but efforts to update the building code show how slow moving our bureaucracies can be. Right. This show has been really funny for me. It sort of had this like investigative journalism type thing where I'll figure out an issue and then talk to the next person about the issue and move further down the line. And what I've realized is every one of our grievances, every one of our issues that we've talked about today have 10 layers behind it that inhibit progress, like the single stair. Well, the city should change the single stair code. Well, we're preempted by the Florida building code. Right. Well, then you go to Tallahassee and you talk to those people, and there's the fire union, and there's there's all of these political dynamics that play into every single thing we've talked about today.
It's complexity on top of complexity.
Yep.
And, it's a balancing act.
And so this here, scroll down. This is a crazy rooftop farming, shared courtyard. This is certainly from the city of Austin. They're talking about rooftop farming. But look at this project though. So I thought that was going to be some like theoretical diagram. This is a real project. And is this in Austin, courtesy?
And see, looks like they have an exterior staircase there maybe, so it's like, you have to have these like areas of refuge. So I'm guessing that they've got fire rated walls on the outside of all those exterior walls, and then you get to be on the outside. So if you did have an emergency, they could get a fire truck with with the ladder up to it. So all these things like are actually things that you deal with as a developer. Like they'll say, "Oh, the distance from the fire hose or fire."
Wait,
truck
scroll up, David.
So
look at this quote. Go up a little further, just right above the picture. Yeah, right here. Stop. Fire officials were blindsided by the speed of reform initiatives, with some fire chiefs stating, "We must do all we can to defeat these misguided efforts." That's what you're going to get. If you start that conversation.
And I don't know that they're wrong.
I don't think they're wrong at all. I think the entire conversation is around life safety.
Right.
And so instead of a fire official saying we must do all we can to defeat these misguided efforts, maybe the fire chief should have a seat at the table and say, look, we recognize we're in the middle of a crisis here. How do we come to the table and be a part of the conversation for housing reform so we can build more creative product? There's always the thing too in this country of groups and lobby interest groups that get together and fight for their cause at the expense of everyone else.
Instead of collaboration.
Collaborate.
Yeah.
The reason
Perspective.
why 100%.
Yeah.
The reason why these conversations are happening is because there's real issues. And we're not going to be able to solve our way through these issues by doing some sort of government housing initiative like they're going to do in New York. That's going to be very difficult for the new mayor to achieve, and the city of Tampa does some good work with smaller developers and larger developers on workforce housing and CRA funding and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, that's not going to supply all the housing we need. No. It's going to cost too much money. You got to let the private sector provide it, but it's going to take everyone at the table. And unfortunately, what this has probably turned into, the single stair thing, this is the National Fire Protection Association, which probably has a huge interest group that lobbies against these types of policies. They're probably not interested in having a conversation. Clearly from this quote, we must do all we can to defeat these misguided efforts. I mean, that's an aggressive stance to have.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, I don't know enough about when a second staircase is actually needed, and from a fire, they're risking their lives going up and down these stairs. But there, and this is just one thing that we're talking about. like one that I think is easier for municipalities to do locally, and I've
Hmm.
seen it in St. Pete, city of St. Pete, is parking. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
they've got some changes to their code in downtown that allows, they built there's like, you can build with basically no parking now, in certain areas. And there's people for that and there's people against that, all for different reasons, but it definitely creates more affordable housing.
Hmm.
It works workforce housing for the people who are going to work in hospitality, work in, a lot of the businesses that we love going to in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
We need to be able to provide housing for them, and that's a easy, I don't want to say easy way, but something that local municipalities have control over.
If Tampa specifically got rid of parking minimums for particular areas of at least the downtown, at least the urban core, and you were doing a project, would you still provide parking?
Depends on the project, it depends who your target consumer is. I think like a lot of the time that code is tied to size of the units, right? And so, all right, I'm going to build 3,500 square foot units on a lot that now will give me density bonuses because I'm providing attainable housing and I can afford to do it because I don't have parking. And now instead of, like I said, building 8 apartments in this zoning, I can do 45. And now maybe the elevator makes sense. Now maybe the 2 staircases make sense. I'm saving all this money on parking. I'm maximizing my footprint. I think that's a solution that I'd love to see implemented a lot more in the
Yeah.
code. Um, that would be good for our community.
There seems to be natural barriers that would force developers to build parking even if the municipality didn't have a requirement. You're going to have the natural market demand.
Yeah.
Certain businesses are not going to sign a lease if there's zero parking. Certain buyers or renters are not going to be a part of the apartment or the condominium if there's no parking. We've even had someone on the show talk about how good luck getting a bank to give you $80 million for your big project if you don't provide any parking, right? So there's this sort of financial
Free markets will work
barrier.
that out. There'll
That's
be,
my point, though.
yeah,
So you've got these market barriers that exist naturally that force developers to put parking in because of a natural market demand, as they should. So why do you need the government to have an overlay on top of that,
right.
especially if it's not applicable to a particular
Yeah,
project?
well, you've seen municipalities put parking maximums in
Right.
because they're trying to promote walkability.
Hmm.
And I just think, that's kind of like a chicken or the egg conversation. And you just have to pick the districts and locations that it makes
Right.
sense,
Yeah.
like why not have some of that thrown in downtown where it's a business district where people are working, where now we have grocery stores that they can walk to. You can really
Yeah.
live, work, play in basically any part of our urban core. You
Didn't
do
the
not need a car.
didn't the downtown partnership lobby for and achieve a reduction of required parking in downtown? It's like 0.75 spaces per unit
I
versus
believe so, but that's still too much
still too much.
In my
And
opinion.
and
I mean,
let's
it could
be
be
real.
tied
Is
to unit size and
Yeah.
attainable housing and
Is
things like
Coulter
that.
really going to build a $150 million building with zero parking spaces for a
Well,
condo?
Coulter builds luxury condos and somebody else builds affordable housing. That's,
Well, my
it's
my
like
point
you
is
don't
they're
go to,
not, right?
you go to Louis Vuitton or you go to Walmart. It's two
Well,
different,
with the parking though, it's like
yeah.
they're gonna want to provide parking because the buyers of their condominiums are gonna want at
Yeah,
least
for
one or
those.
two
Right,
parking
right.
spaces.
And then right next to them, you might have someone with zero parking who
Yeah.
has and that's creating community, diversity. All those people buying those $2 million penthouses want to go to the cool coffee shop or bakery where, these people need a place to live, and so that's something that I hope is part of our code. We're seeing municipalities adopt it. Probably wasn't a thought in 1987.
Yeah.
Um,
I brought
it
it up.
needs to be now.
I brought it up. We've had, I think, 2 or 3 meetings on the Land Development Code Advisory team. It's sort of stopped. I think the last time we met was almost a year ago, February, but I believe we've stopped because the county is doing the comprehensive plan update to the future land use section. So we're sort of waiting on that to be wrapped up before we can initiate what we're doing. But I told Clarion, I said, these parking minimums, we don't have to be the pioneer. There's a ton of municipalities that have done this, and they've probably have information we can gather and evaluate if it's good for Tampa or not. We don't need to guess, let's look at other areas around the country that have successfully or not implemented parking changes, parking maximums, reduction of parking in general, and see how it plays out. There's got to be, there's so many lots and so many buildings in our urban core that can't be redeveloped without going through the PD process or without going through all these exceptions and layers. And that's going to inhibit a lot of growth. Like, there's buildings for sale and I look at them and like, oh, that's so cool, but it comes with 0 parking and you're never going to be able to get this or that in there. You're going to have to come to city council, and then there's going to be a debate, and you're going to basically have a court case, a quasi-judicial process. And there's not a lot of people that are without unlimited means that want to go through that process.
Yeah. No, that's the dysfunction
Yeah.
that we live in, and I don't want anyone to feel bad for me as a developer, but it impacts the whole community.
Yeah, man.
So,
well, I appreciate you coming on the show.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Keep doing the good work, man.
Yeah, man. You too. And good luck with everything you're doing. And thank you for what you do too. Like, I think you're
No one's thanking me for it. Appreciate it.
well, look, you're providing a place where people can buy into a community that has been largely neglected for a long time. And I think you're absolutely right. Ownership creates a stake, and a stake creates people having skin in the game, and that's always good. They're going to care more, they're going to be more active. And although you might feel like you're a small piece of that, you are a piece of that, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It.
If people want to learn more about Canvas City Townhomes, where can they look up the info? And who's your broker?
Well, we're our own broker. We have in-house sales. So canvascityhomes.com has all of our projects there, or sitedevelop.com.
And you guys are on Instagram too, right?
Yeah.
Pull that up, Mr. David.
I don't have Instagram on my phone, brain rot, but
you don't have it on your phone? You're a smart man. I wish I could get rid of it. David, take it over for me.
I think it's at Canvas City Homes.
Is it? You find it, David? And so you've got phase 1, phase 2 coming online hopefully soon.
Yeah. So actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because this is where we get to have a lot of fun. And you'll see here collaborations, like, actually get out of this one, but go to like that, the producer on the left or the drink maker. We do is we partner a lot of our advertising with local artists, and that's part of the Canvas brand. Give them a platform and pay for a cool reel with them, and highlight some local artists. So we've done it with, this guy's a producer. We've done it with baristas. We've done it with on Nebraska Avenue has a really cool new kind of commercial sector that's coming, and we did it with the film studio there. So this has been a lot of fun. We get to highlight local businesses, local
what bar is that?
Artisans. That was Mandarin and Hyde.
Oh, cool.
There. So, because like I said, our Canvas brand is in multiple neighborhoods.
Right.
So, that's a DJ, right? She's on one of our rooftops, a local DJ. So we've had a lot of fun with that. And it's like, we like the grittiness of the city, and the artistic nature of Canvas. We're not trying to be the Ritz-Carlton. That's not why you buy there. So we have fun just kind of being a little bit different and playing on that.
Before I let you run, you talked about you've got another Canvas project in Ybor.
Yeah. So that's Canvas Ybor. So we call this one Canvas Gas Worx, because it's in, and so that's on the.
You want to pull up a map, David?
East side.
Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in permitting. We've received some of our permit approvals. It's on 22nd Street and 11th Avenue. And
North, David. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
cool.
that block, it's got one historic home on it, and then a commercial property. So there's 21 units going there. It's 3 different unit types, which you don't typically see on a smaller project, but that's part of being in the Ybor district, right? You're not going to have, historic district, you're going to have a little more to do. No, that's our St. Pete one. It might not be
Updated on the website.
On the website. Yeah. So that one we're excited about. We're in permitting. Hopefully we'll break ground sometime in between Q1 and Q2 of next year.
How many units did you say?
There's 21 on that part, and then we have another 17 units that are actually infilled in this East Ybor neighborhood, which is, I
very
think,
cool,
super exciting. Right, we have a couple duplex townhomes going in down south across from the Arturo Fuente factory. We have 10 units. And I love this East Ybor neighborhood. Has so much potential. There's a ton of character, and now you've got TGH doing that expansion. There to the east. I think it's like 18 acres that they're doing. Right there, right for the hospital, which is like
across from IKEA.
Yeah. Now look how small that district is.
Right.
And all those boundaries. So I did a lot of work in Ybor City back in the day. And what brought me to develop there was I saw the natural boundaries. You had 275, Boy Scout, Lois. It's like, wow, there's only so many homes in here. You got the same thing here. And when that neighborhood like starts to take off and you look at the proximity of the TGH and all the jobs that's going to bring in, that neighborhood is like, people are going to say, like, now's the time.
So where exactly is the TGH campus and what is it? It's like another
It's a hospital. Yeah, it's a full hospital. It was just in the paper, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But
it's just another campus? It's another hospital?
It's a hospital, full hospital.
Wow.
And all the medical office that's going to then go along.
Did we cover it, David?
You covered it. There it is, Tampa.
Well, I'll be. Here we go.
Yeah.
So directly, so catty corner to IKEA. So across from.
So Coppertail's right there. Yeah. So Lecter, I was actually part of the development team on that, which is
a fun. Great looking building.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I've been able to do, so in this East Ybor neighborhood, I was part of Lecter, which is like 240 apartments. And I've also restored bungalows that were moved by the city during the interstate expansion. So I've been really fortunate to do big and small, all with a lot of character. And I was in the dark about this. I had no idea it was coming, and I was really excited when I heard about it because jobs are such a, that's the driving factor.
So this 10 acres is in addition to a 32,000 square foot innovation center on the west side of Ybor.
I believe it's maybe 18 acres. I thought in total there that they have under.
So you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of very high paying jobs.
Yeah, and then what comes next to it is other medical office, private surgical centers, right? Like this is, and you look how, so like, people ask, and this is one of the places that's still attainable to buy housing,
right? Yeah.
So people always ask, where should I go? And it's like, I think we have one thing that site has a history of that I think is cool is being a bit pioneering in our locations. And I think that has a lot to do with like the culture of open-mindedness that we have and inclusiveness and all of that. I think this is it. I think this East Ybor neighborhood, if I'm a young person or just somebody who's looking for lower cost to buy a home, this is where to look.
Yeah, because you could buy an existing home there for maybe 354.
Yeah, depending on condition. I've seen stuff in the 3s and 4s.
And you've got an appreciation on the backside because of all the growth is coming. Walkable. You've got all these little restaurants and coffee shops and more to come. Yeah,
jobs.
Totally, man. So so you've got that block off 22nd, and you said 17 units of infill.
Yeah, and 10 of them are going right across from the Arturo Fuente factory,
which is on the south side.
Yeah, on 3rd.
Wow.
Which is really, I called Prana the crown jewel earlier, but the Arturo Fuente is, crown jewel of Ybor City. It's a beautiful building,
So when Daryl's on the show, he talks about how the Columbia really could be the centerpiece and not on the east edge. Really, Columbia could be the centerpiece of Ybor in terms of like the geographical area.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the boundaries, that's where the center is, But East Ybor there is really the residential neighborhood, right?
Mm.
Like I mentioned, I lived on Fifth. Like there's just look at that. And this goes back to like why I believed in our Gas Worx project, why I believe in this East Ybor Canvas project is there's such limited single family fee simple housing.
Mm-hmm.
Like as these neighborhoods fill in and get more desirable, there's not going to be more coming in, and that's why we've always been urban focused as developers. Is there's unlimited sprawl, there's only so much infill land available, and then you take into account the pains of and time of a permitting process and construction. You can never really have an oversupply of infill townhomes in a neighborhood like this. Your market's going to go up and down, but you're never going to have thousands of units that are sitting there waiting to be absorbed.
It's also really important because it's the puzzle pieces in between the larger projects, like Gas Worx and Water Street and
we're piggybackers. That's what.
Yeah. Well, you create the connectivity in between, and for a district that has been gutted like Ybor through urban renewal and decades of neglect, et cetera, it's like you kind of need those developers to come in and do the smaller projects in between to make it all fluid.
It's really fun being part of the community in that way, like we've discussed, and I think they're cool projects and are important to the urban fabric.
And just imagine if a baseball stadium comes to Ybor Harbor.
I think
that's a whole different podcast.
With or without it, I think Ybor's got a bright future. I really do. I'd love to see a stadium there for selfish reasons. My office on Nebraska, I could walk over. It'd be a lot of fun. But with or without it, I think Ybor City's got a bright future. But I do really hope the Rays stay in the Bay Area. As long as they're in the Bay Area, I'm not going to be selfish about it. So,
well, it's certainly a special place, and you're right. With or without it, it's got an incredible story ahead.
There's stories in there, man. Cool stories. I could tell you a few off the air. A lot of fun stories in Ybor City.
Well, I'll let you run, man. Thank you again for coming on the show, Mike Mincberg, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. See you next week.